happened is appalling.
Let me get that response from Hafez.
I'll be happy to tell you both what should have happened and what should happen moving forward, sir. First, what should have happened is that you do not support a deranged lunatic like Gaddafi just simply by because he accepted to hand over a bunch of scrap metal and you pretend that it was a nuclear program. The fact that you should not have supported him because he was trying to vow to support your anti-terrorism movement, which basically meant that he abused the rights of Libyan people. That's what should have happened. Moving forward, what should happen now, yes. But statements and declarations are a dime a dozen. There has to be an action done by the United Nations in which you at least try to protect the population of the country from this onslaught. I mean, Egypt lost about 300 people in 19 days. Libya is now, Human Rights Watch is reporting 500 or so dead.
But Hafez, let me ask you, what would have been, when you said, you know, this is the UK and other countries shouldn't have supported Muammar Gaddafi at this time with, you know, for all this time, what would have been the alternative? What would have been the action that could have been taken?
They should have, I'm not against opening up to Libya. The question is how you do it. They could have put on the table in negotiations with him, in addition to the nuclear issue, in addition to the terrorism issue, they should have put the reform and governance and human rights on the table. This nonsensical statements coming out of the White House or the State Department or everywhere, telling us that somehow they were raising these issues of human rights in private, is insult added to injury. Why is it difficult to raise the issue of human rights publicly, like they raise the issue of terrorism publicly, like sending him through the rendition program people he can torture? I mean, it's obscene. And what we have seen, sorry, Riz, but what we have seen coming out is the kind of deal that England and particularly the UK government has struck with Gaddafi in secret, in back rooms. I mean, all of this public statements is nonsensical.
And Mr. Saad, interestingly, the US actually has been critical of the UK, saying that it propped up Muammar Gaddafi. And I wonder, is there some kind of friction you see between America and Britain now because of this?
Well, I think there will be no friction because they will just talk publicly, and then the deals and behind the scenes will be different. Now we are facing our disappointment with the reaction of international communities, and the call for the Security Council to convene after 7 days of massacre, brutal massacre, is something which I think I should condemn. It should be done the first 2 days. It should be done earlier than that. And now talking about this kind of declaration, which we hear from London and Washington, we didn't hear much from Washington by any way, but this kind of declaration does not give any protection to the Libyan people. The Libyan people are under the machinery of the certified terrorist. This terrorist, who declared as a terrorist internationally, was dealing with as terrorist fighter, as an alliance in terrorist fighting. Mm-hmm. This is unbelievable, and this is a matter of concern for us to see Libyan people killed every day, and nothing has been done in Syria.
So, Richard, you had mentioned earlier the issue of the security of Britain and other European countries which are heavily dependent on Libyan oil. The chaos that's ensuing now might pose some kind of energy security risk. What do you see as far as the scenario there? What's going to happen?
I'm sorry, I have to ask you to let me have the opportunity
Please.
to rebut the repeated allegations that are made against Britain. First, there is no evidence whatsoever of British arms being used. Secondly, I can understand the misery that people feel at the murders taking place in Libya, but we still haven't heard a practical suggestion about how this protection can be offered. Thirdly, I would ask, is the world, or is it not, a better place as a result of the negotiated improvements in Libya's international behavior that have been achieved in the matter of terrorism and in the matter of weapons of mass destruction. And I reject utterly the suggestion that all that was handed over in 2003 was a bunch of scrap metal. And I would refer the Speaker to the International Atomic Energy Agency's repeated reports about the degree to which that program was advanced and the degree to which the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty was protected by virtue of the negotiated end of that program. Obviously, there is a long way to go on the question of human rights, and I appreciate and can sympathize with the fact that that wasn't the highest possible priority. And all I can say is that countries are mandated by their populations to achieve a balance in their international relations. And that means when you're dealing with Russia, you try and achieve the best possible world that you can by dealing with Russia, and maybe you soft pedal what happens in Chechnya. You don't give the maximum priority at the exclusion of everything else of what happens in Chechnya. The other point I need to make is that there is no genuine friction between the United States and the United Kingdom on this question, because Ambassador Sussman got it wrong. The United States oil firms are even more active in Libya than the UK ones. There are no new arms sales to Libya, but American arms firms are in there too. So if what he was saying was a criticism, it was undoubtedly a criticism of the United States government, and we've noticed absolutely nothing more from Washington on this subject. The fact is, the United Kingdom is not ahead of the pack in its relations with Libya. We got in late, long after the Italians and long after the French, because it took us time to deal with our serious bilateral issues with Libya, both on the matter of Lockerbie and the killing of WPC Fletcher.
Hafid Al-Ghouel, let me ask you then, in response, of course, you know, the ambassador, I mean, has made some interesting points there. Let me ask you how you regard this view of the US-British dynamic, and many saying that it was a way for the US warmed up to the idea that there was a Bush-Blair axis that helped to show that the invasion of of Iraq under Saddam Hussein was a valid movement because it encouraged Muammar Gaddafi to give up his.
I have no doubt. I mean, knowing, I don't know the background of this, but I could assure you that at least Washington had very little really motivated people when it comes to Libya. I mean, it was a very minor issue on the agenda of most of the United States policymakers, and they were taking their hints from London, and the lead was definitely from England. It was not here. And that is based on my own personal contacts with a number of these policies. They warmed up to the idea as they're moving forward, and they were desperate during an election to show some form of a win after what happened in Iraq. But the question is also that, I mean, I think it's clear now from a lot of the leaked documents on WikiLeaks and others, really what was happening behind the scene when it came to Libya among British policymakers. And I think that's a very clear issue.
Now, of course, Mr. Saad, there's the issue of what happens next in terms of who would run Libya if the Gaddafi regime falls, and what kind of relationship it would then have with Europe and with the US.
Well, at the moment in the cities where the demonstrators running, they already constituted committees to run those cities, and I got reports from Benghazi and other cities that there was an atmosphere of solidarity and friendship, brotherhood, which did not exist under Gaddafi regime and under his